Since I quit my day job, which is my full-time job, the salaried one, I stopped working. I don't feel I'm working anymore at all. Like this venture, I've been full-time since October 2023.
I love your guess.
Yeah, and since 2022, June, I've been on this part-time. And every time, I've never had a weekend. I've always had all sorts of, how do I say it? Nights and days and everything in between that is just hogging my mind is this and the goal. And that's my wife, that's my daughters, that's my parents, that's everybody.
It's okay. But I've always worked in industries you enjoy. You don't feel like you're actually working. But that's the only thing you should do in life. I'm sure about it.
It is. But so there are two ways.
But not everybody has that choice, obviously.
No, exactly. So there are two types of work, right? There's either you work for you or you work for someone else.
Yes.
Right? If you work for you, then technically, if you're really lucky, and I consider myself really lucky, you don't work.
Yeah.
A day in your life, because I'm not working. Like now, imagine we're working and we're just chatting. We're like two people who just got to know each other, and hopefully we'll develop some sort of a friendship or some sort of professional relationship. And why not? You know what I mean? Like it doesn't have to be a. That's why I always, since the time I was a full-time employee and I have my team and everybody's like, oh, work-life balance, and I'm like, there's nothing called work-life balance.
No.
Because the concept of balance is either or, right?
Unless you work in an industry you love, which I always have. I've chosen them. But I'm one of the lucky ones.
So luck is one thing, talent is another thing, but also I'm assuming lots of hard work, lots and lots of hard work.
And you do give up money. So when you want to work in the music industry, you're going to give up money, right? So it's not just going to happen that you choose the music industry. They don't pay much, right? Fashion is not one of the highest paying industries, but you get other fringe benefits. So if you enjoy those industries, then there's some kind of cost. So working in telco, which I did, and I hated, or working in banking. So there are some industries that pay really well, but you would not enjoy a day. You feel like every hour is painful.
It's a compromise, isn't it?
It is a compromise, for sure.
I love this because it's a compromise. Yeah. And whether you like it, you don't like it, it is a compromise. And
100% is. And industries know that. Fun industries don't pay, right? So they always tell you.
They capitalize on the
they tell you, we give you free tickets, we give you a great CV, you can have a good time.
Free internet plans.
Whatever. But if you work in tech or if you work in certain other industries that are telco, for me, or banking, there isn't a lot of innovation. And you're innovative or you're entrepreneurial and they're telling you sit inside that box, then they're going to pay you for that, right? One or the other, you choose.
They're paying for a compromise.
And some people like the money, and that's good too.
And I'll tell you what, the personalities are different. Some people genuinely like to sit in a cubicle or at a desk all day long. Like I had, in my team, when the maximum number of people that I've managed, not much, about 40, I had people that never stood a minute to stay at their desk. And others decorated their desk. They have all the plans and their photos of their daughters and sons, and they just like it there.
Until you told them it's hot desking and, they flipped out.
They flipped out. No, the hot desking never worked. Because
I think it works. I love hot desking.
It does?
Yeah, it's great.
How? I mean, what happens to those?
Including my own office.
Okay.
So anybody who needs to use my office can use my office.
Interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
So I've worked in hot desking since 2018. And my office is free for anybody. I can see a desk that's empty and sit there. I don't feel that needs to become your home. You don't need to bring pictures of your dog or your family. In a way, it's better for them not to make work feel so comfortable, so homey, so they can go home, right? You don't want it to feel too homey. It's not a disassociation or that you're not attached to the business. It has nothing to do with that. It's very flexible, especially with flexible hours. It allows people to come and go. And now you're not spending on offices that are empty, right? So it does work. Financially for the businesses, it's great.
It works if it has the value system that you just mentioned. And I want to tap on that for a second, because I don't want you to be attached to work. I want you to be attached to your home.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So pictures of your family and your home from working in cubicles, right?
Okay.
And from spending 12-hour, 14-hour days in the office and getting the comfort of feeling like you put your little cactus plant and somehow you turned it into your little living room, right? But that shouldn't be the case. It should be finish your work, leave, come the next day, and don't get emotionally attached to that desk and that chair, right? I mean, it's like the office, right?
Yes.
When you became attached to the stapler.
Yes, I remember that.
It's very similar to
funny.
that, yeah.
But that's a value system for a leader that if you're able to act on it.
Yeah, for sure.
It doesn't exist. Because I feel, well, okay, let me rephrase.
In the companies I've worked for, it does exist. They, especially European businesses, there is a bit of a focus on balancing home and work. Of course, COVID has hurt a lot of that because now we've come back and some people have gotten very used to flexibility.
Yeah.
And there's a confusion about working remotely and flexible work. Those are two different things. And we have these debates all the time. Working from home does not mean you're flexible in your time. It doesn't mean you wake up at 11 and you work till 2, because there's a productivity time when the team need to work together, right? As cool as you want to be. Even a designer who can probably be very nocturnal and work only in the evenings needs to work with the marketing team who are, early risers. So you can't allow too much of that flexible timing. But remote working is perfectly fine. People can, in my opinion, I've managed people in 4 countries. Out of Dubai, you can be anywhere and work perfectly fine. You don't need to be sat in front of me for me to know that you're doing the job.
Why do leaders want it?
Habit. And it's of a certain age group, by the way. Not all age groups, certain age groups. So I see it a lot in my age group, that they got used to coming to the office every day. And for them, COVID was a bit of a break. And now they want everybody to come back because they feel like if the team is not together, they're not seeing each other every day, then they're going to lose a bit of control. There's an immediate assumption that someone's off doing something else. And that's a bad thought process. It's the opposite. I find that people working at home work harder.
Yes.
And they're more committed.
Yes.
And it's tougher for them.
The quality of the work is even higher.
Yes,
the production,
and it's they're lonely as well. So if we can bring them into the office, it's better. And they feel as well that teamwork is impacted. They want to put them all together, see them have coffees together, see them have lunch together.
What about the introverts?
But that's not the reality, really, of what happens in the office anyway, right? Especially if you have 4 teams in 4 different countries. It's actually killing them sometimes because they're working on Dubai zone, London zone, New York zone. It's tough for them. So they need to have that break, right? And what I find is it's control more than anything. Why do they want them back? It's a need to control the team. And I'm not saying also different stages of businesses. Businesses that are very well established, where the team has been together for a very long time, can do this a lot easier than a team that have just gotten together.
Right.
So a startup needs the team together.
Right.
I'm a startup now, and it's very tough to have remote workers everywhere when you're really trying to build a team culture. Once the team culture is built, you can really work from anywhere. And it doesn't take long to build that team culture. You can do it in 6 months, you can do it in a year, and then people can do what they need to do. If you're dedicated to the cause and you love what you do and you are very oriented towards results, you'll do that anywhere you go. You could be on holiday and you're on, right? And if you're switched off even when you're in the office, on your desk, drinking that coffee or having lunch with 6 other people.
Exactly. Now, I mean, It's refreshing hearing you saying that, because one of the things that I know for a fact is that we have an epidemic of control culture in our organizations, especially in this part of the world, which is counterintuitive to everything you mentioned, especially when it comes to purpose and goals. Because if your goal is actually to produce, what difference does it make in people staying in the office or on the go, as long as no one is being impacted negatively? There's no winners and losers. Like, for example, when it's all in the office, the losers are the introverts, for example, especially if it's open office. When there's no office, everybody's at home, the losers are the extroverts, the ones who thrive on people being together and having these type of mental sparring sessions. Like you said, as a startup, you need to have those sessions, you need to have those debates and dialogues that will spark radical ideas that then you're like, whoa, where did this come from? And
startups, it's very difficult. You can't have people work remotely when a startup is getting together, because the personalities are getting to get to know one another, right? It's almost like starting a relationship long distance. It always, an email can be very misunderstood when you don't know the personality behind it. But I sit on a board of a company that is completely hybrid, Maghrabi, and they're incredible. They're probably the best example of a hybrid company that I've seen. And they have offices in Saudi, in Dubai, in Cairo. And they work so well as a hybrid organization. I've done so many meetings with them. They do it over Zoom. Everybody has their camera on. And they're used to it. It's like being in the office. Exactly. It's a culture that is hybrid that works. But they're a well-established business, a well-established culture. That's the difference.
You mentioned the word culture quite a few times, and that's a word that usually you have two camps. Either people know it, but they don't know what it means, or people don't know it. But then people who know it and know what it means is like kind of a diamond. Like, what is culture to you?
Culture is more important than mission, vision, purpose, or any statement that some marketeer can come up with. Culture is what keeps people together. Culture is what keeps employees in the company. And culture is this, it's not an unknown. It's a set of feelings that you develop towards an organization. This is an organization that cares about people. This is an organization that takes care of the 12 good things you did in the past, doesn't hone in on the one bad thing you did yesterday, right? So they take the good with the bad. These are examples.
So in reality, something that exists only in La La Land.
No, it exists. It exists. It definitely exists.
I love your positive outlook.
Yeah, I've built those cultures, so I know.
That's the beauty of your definition, a set of feelings. You see, I come from a research background, and in my mind, culture is a collective programming of the mind that makes a group of people distinct.
Oh my gosh.
That's very academic, right?
That's very academic.
What you said now is so profound and powerful. A set of feelings. Wow, okay.
Feeling safe, feeling protected. So I used to work in the US. I worked in the UK. And culture meant something very different to the Middle East. In the Middle East, we have grown with a lot of uncertainty. Yeah. We've ended up working in jobs we hated because we're supporting people back home. Or
exactly, not in our home country as well.
Not in our home country. We're on somebody's visa. So up until recently here, but let's say we're talking about other countries as well who are listening in. So you're at the mercy of that company. You're not free. Not everybody has the chance to build their own company. So every step you make could make you or break you. And we have managers who have not grown necessarily always in a very professional setting, right? So they're always coping with the ups and downs of an organization. Does it have cash? Does it not have cash? It's learning along the way because we're new.
Yes.
We're a new economy.
Relatively speaking, yes.
So they struggle along the way. What they seek is security above all. Second thing they seek is learning. They want to learn. Because when you look at our systems, university systems, the way you get chosen for what you study is based on your grades. It's not based on your interest. So if you got a 70, you go into English. 80s, maybe dentistry. 90s, pharma. 100, doctor. But you didn't want to be a doctor, engineer, pharma, dentist, whatever. You wanted to be a musician. Where do you go? Where do you work? Who's going to accept you? In bigger countries, you have that option.
Yes.
Here we look at a CV and we decide what you should do based on your CV.
Yes.
In the US, you could be an English degree major. You're interested in marketing. Come give marketing a try. And that's what I've tried to bring with me. To look at someone's CV, put it aside and say, what do you want to do? What are you interested in? If they said, I'm in a band, I love music, I love creating, or guess what? I've been studying interior design at night, even though I'm a dentist. True story. But I never wanted to look inside someone's mouth a day in my life. By the way, apparently highest level of depression and suicide is amongst dentists.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And so, I mean...
I should warn my sister. She's a dentist.
Exactly, warn her. But the point is that they see this opportunity and they say, wow, that's a great culture that cares about what I want to do.
As a human being.
Not what my CV says.
Right.
And that leads you to other things too. We talk about women and women in the workforce. A lot of them have their own set of responsibilities in this region. She's the caretaker, main caretaker. It's changing, but for the most part, there's a lot of expectation on her.
Yeah.
And looking at her CV and seeing maybe a 4-year gap or 6-year gap.
That's a stigma.
And so what does that mean? She raised the kids. But before that, she was doing something amazing.
But does that have an implication on her kind of...
100%.
Really?
She has to take 2-3 steps back. She almost can never find a job. Probably in the single digits are the ones that can go back into the workforce, right? So that's why I focus. I was the first to bring a concept called returnships. So we all love internships. Replace that with returnships if you don't have a choice. Both are important. Returnships are when you bring women and men, I have to add, back into the workforce.
Who took a break.
Who took a break.
Right.
In the past, it used to be the woman. But now it's sometimes the man who's taking the break.
That's
you
true.
need to allow for him or her to come back to the workforce without being set back. Without feeling like those 6 years that I took care of my family didn't count for anything. Because as I always say, she was the CEO of her family. She was managing the kids and a household.
Toughest employees.
Absolutely. She had the toughest job. She was probably managing a classroom as well and doing things with the kids. She probably has the best organizational skills you can imagine. And why not bring her back? And what happens is you have this workforce that are very loyal, they're dedicated, they really want to work. We always think that they want to come back to work because they feel like it. We don't get that sometimes they have to work. They need that dual income. So returnships are not easy though. They come with allowing flexibility, especially in the beginning, because she's been taking care of a home. You can't just extract her from that. So maybe she needs to leave early or take Fridays off because they finish early or whatever the case may be. And allow for some training because she's not been in the office for a while. And it's not so much she can't do it as much as she thinks she can't do it. So it takes about 4 to 6 months to retrain them. Software, how to answer emails, what to dress for work. A lot of things are lost in those 6 years, 4 years, whatever they are. But the key thing is not to set them back. Take them back into a middle management role, not as the PA or the assistant, right? So that's a big talent pool that we're losing out on.
One thing that came to my mind while you were mentioning this, because my wife took also 4 years of break. Now, I can't remember exactly, because that was a long time ago. Our daughters are older now. But we didn't face that problem per se to a point where it's fatal. So, but apparently, I can only imagine that, yes, it is right, especially if the woman is at a higher level in the society or in the professional ladder. 6 years is a dent. As an organization, as a CEO, as a founder, as an owner, as a board member, that is a cost I have to pay.
Yes, it is a cost.
Because it's business at the end of the day. So two things came to my mind. First, it is a cost that I have to pay. Why? The second question is, remember, 90% of the people here, I'm talking about the GCC specifically, are expats. So why would I want to do it for someone who's not part of this country? So even if I have a higher goal for the nation, it's only if I'm a globalist humanist that I would be able to do that. And, those are kind of very rare. But why would I do it?
We have a talent pool problem. So when you're looking for good talent, they're at home. A lot of the times you're trying to convince them that now is a good time to come back. They could be lawyers, they could be accountants, they could be in any function, finance managers. We need you. Come back. A lot of the times it's about not asking the question, why do we not see women in the higher positions? Well, if we lost them for 4 to 6 years and didn't do enough to bring them back.
That's a reset.
Don't expect to have senior level position females or board members unless they're the ones who did not take time off.
Right.
Like myself, right? But what about the ones who can? What about the ones who are able? Bring them back in, put them back into the talent pool, and you will start seeing more women in those upper positions. And we need that. We talked about that. The diversity, inclusion.
Do you think there's a problem of diversity in the management, in the boardroom?
Globally, there is.
Globally, yeah.
I wouldn't say, I've seen it less, believe it or not, in Dubai. Then I've seen it in Germany. I see it as a much bigger issue in Germany than I did here. Because here there's such a focus on it. It's a topic
deliberate focus.
Deliberate. Not just from government, private companies as well. There's a lot of focus.
Why do you think the focus here is more than there?
Because the new CEO is younger, sees the benefits of having a good balanced board. And because we're no longer seeing a true differentiation where we are getting to the point where we're no longer saying men think this way, women think this way. We're past that.
We're past that, yeah.
We're past that. And with the next generation, that's going to completely go away.
I don't think that was a massive issue in this part of the world. Do you think it was?
10 years ago, yes.
Was it? Thinking-wise? I mean, biological and sort of, I want a woman to be a carpenter, that's a different story, right? I'm talking about the boardroom, thinking level, creativity, managing people. Do you think that we had that issue?
We did, because the roles a woman took were always HR, marketing.
But was it directed or chosen by the women themselves?
I almost feel directed. When I think back, it was always directed, right? Think about the big organizations. It was always the female head of HR.
Yes.
Female head of marketing for whatever reason.
True.
That's changing now.
Because it's creativity,
now
compassion.
Head of legal is female.
Yeah.
Head of finance is female. Head of investment is female. So that's changing.
So was it, my point, I think my question is, and this is obviously anecdotal, nothing is researched probably at the level in this part of the world. Was it educational or was it because people did not choose? So let's say I'm an owner of an organization and I had 2 CVs, a woman and a man for my CFO. My mind will always gravitate towards the man. I don't know. Obviously, I don't have the experience. I have to ask my wife. But do you think it was at that level?
I do believe it was a form of self-selection on behalf of the candidate to choose certain industries. Now that's changing. She wants something else. She wants to prove that she can do any job. So that's one of them. And we've become a meritocracy environment. Yes. And that helps. Where the best person for the job gets the job.
So the competency-based.
Yes, we're looking at candidates for roles in a much more academic way, where they have to pass different tasks. So it's not one person's opinion. We've passed the days of one owner own the building, it's his decision who gets that job, right? Today it's a group of people, it's a few tasks that they have to do, a few psychometric tests, they're bringing in outside organizations. There's a file that's built over time that says, okay, based on a scorecard, this person is the right person for the job.
How important that is for innovation in an organization, to be deliberately focusing on that?
I don't think it's linked to innovation. Mm-hmm. Innovation is culture. So you're either an innovative culture or you're not. Okay. Right? And if you're an innovative culture, then any function is encouraged to be innovative. So that does not affect innovation in any way. If you use a scorecard to choose someone, that improves emotional culture that says, this is an organization that will reward me because I'm best. So the good ones rise to the top, the bad ones leave. And I'm a big believer in the bottom 15%. Maybe I'm a bit harsh.
Right? My bottom is 25%. So
yeah, I believe in the top 15% right. as well. Maybe the top 25%.
Right.
So I believe in both, right? So culturally, you know that the best person got the job. That's great. So that makes the organization function better together. Then innovation comes on top of it, which is in my job, I'm encouraged to think as freely as I want to be and come up with solutions to problems in any function. As a CFO, as head of marketing, I have a problem in front of me, either as a team or individually. And I know that management is going to listen to my options and not shoot them down because they weren't their ideas.
Yes.
That's the main point behind innovation, that it can come from anyone. It can be from the person who's managing the cleaning supplies or the stationery cabinet or the most senior person on the board. Innovation can come across the board, but you have to be a listening organization to take advantage of that.
Can you define more that culture that makes people feel that they're almost compelled to innovate because they can?
It's exciting to be heard. It's exciting to have an idea and see it happen. There's nothing more exciting for an employee to come up with an idea and see it rolled out, not just locally, but globally, right? So let me go back to the Virgin days.
Yes.
An idea could come from a warehouse guy. A stockkeeper can come up with a counting system, a way of doing inventory that was saving us time, money, effort, better results because he saw something no one else saw. Because whatever reason, he was an engineer back home or just has an engineering way of thinking, and he comes forward because he can, he's allowed to, and says, I have a better way of doing this. And in one of your walkthroughs, he sits next to you and says, if you don't mind, I saw how we did the last inventory and have a better way of doing it. It's an example.
Yeah.
It's a live example. Tell me more. Well, we spent too many times putting stickers on so-and-so and, you know, I have a better way of doing it. And he'll share something. Now that got implemented locally in his store, globally. And then he got recognized by Virgin, by Richard, for creating something for Virgin. How amazing is that? Wow. We have a person of determination on the shop floor. I was with him yesterday. I left Virgin a while ago, but I still love to visit my team. And he's still there, Saeed. I love this guy because he's always innovating. So he's been with the business maybe for 10 years now. And I was the first person to put anyone on the shop floor and they get paid equal, right? He always has so many ideas. This guy, he's unbelievable. Unbelievable. His brain is functioning. This is a guy in another world would have been committed to live with his parents and not work a day in his life. And he's so innovative. I always go to him, Saeed, what ideas do you have for me? And he'll pop 2, 3, 4. It's going to be an hour, but he's going to come up with great ideas. When Holly Branson was in town last month, she gave him an award.
Wow.
And he's so proud of it. I'm so proud of Holly for doing that. I'm so proud of the Virgin team for keeping him. So that's just an example of how it can come from anyone. And he's so proud. He made it globally. He's one of the few recognized people by Richard and Holly Branson.
That's powerful.
Very.
That's powerful. I mean, this thing has to be publicized and amplified to the highest levels simply because, I mean, we talked about culture and how it is the main driver for innovation. And obviously innovation is so important for growth, for performance, for the nation's prosperity in general when the collective innovation is happening. And then you started with an idea, because this is the seed of an innovation. It's so powerful, but the idea is nothing if it doesn't have the proper soil. And that seed, so it's the soil before the seed, so the seed is able to actually...
That. I never thought about that way.
Sprout.
Yes.
No, you just gave me the idea now because you're mentioning it. It's like because of this environment, which is the soil that you've just mentioned, it allowed for that seed to actually sprout and flourish. So it starts with that. So the psychological safety, the ability to actually go, the courage to go to that leader who's on the shop floor, who's doing his walkthroughs and say, hey, I have an idea. Can I get a minute of his time? And then that manager actually goes out of their way and make it a point to sit with them and listen. And then
it's more than courage. It's knowing that you can. So it's the ability, right? So you as a manager, you have to be very open. You're there to listen, right? And you walk with them. You normally know their name, right? You make an effort to get to know them. How's your family in Pakistan? What did the flood affect you a lot in Philippines? Whatever. When you do that, they know you know them, right? So then that opens up the dialogue for them to come back and say, by the way, Nisreen, so-and-so. Not Miss Nisreen. That already creates a barrier.
Yes.
Right? That's not allowed. We never, ever hire anyone who says, sir, ma'am, miss. You know, that's also a culture.
Yes.
Because you created already a level, a barrier by just saying, call me Miss so-and-so.
Even if you accept it.
No, yeah. Me and you were equal.
Yes.
We just happen to be born in different parts of the world. That's the only difference, right? Otherwise, I had more opportunity than you did, but I'm here to create a similar opportunity. So when you go to the store and you're open, and it's your body language, it says a lot, right? You see something on the floor that's a napkin, right? That someone left, and you pick it up and you put it in the garbage. Or a t-shirt that needs to be folded, and you go on your knees and you fold it, right? They're watching you. You're telling them, I'm one of you. I care about the store as much as you do. And I'm gonna help you. I'm with you. I'm on my knees. They'll come to you and say, oh, please, please, I'll do it. No. I love doing this, right? So, by the way, this is in all the roles that I've had since then. I do this. I used to do it in Net-a-Porter with setups and things. I used to love that too. We're going to do this together. You're not going to be the only ones to stay up till 2 a.m. doing the photo shoot, whatever. I'm going to be right there with you. Because the beautiful moments are those. It's not the office moments.
Yes.
It's not when you're on calls. It's when your guard is down, you're tired, it's 2 a.m., you're exhausted, it's hot outside, and you just completed an amazing shoot, or you just finished an incredible project.
And you can't fake that because people will see through it.
They especially the new generation.
Yeah.
They're onto you. They're totally onto you. They've seen the world in difficult times. They grew without any financial security. They've had to fend for their own emotionally, because it's been a mean world, socially speaking, whether it's the internet or other things.
Yeah.
They're tough kids, right? And the generation above them needs to gain their respect in a big way for them to listen to them, care about them, or even work with them. Or they're out the door, they don't care. They're not the generation who have parents saying to them, what, you're leaving out in less than 10 years? You need to stay for 10 years, or you need to stay for 5 years. They don't care. They'll stay for a year, they'll stay for 6 months. If they don't like it, they're leaving. So that also makes the manager even more alert to wanting to listen in an authentic way, because they have a lot of great things to share, to say, and you can get a lot more out of them if you allow them. They want to be autonomous, right? The number one reason Gen Zs and younger will want to stay with you is autonomy. You take that away from them, they don't want to work.
The link that you've just smoothly moved from culture to leadership. We haven't yet touched leadership, because that was part of my thinking process. Why did you do that? Is it because culture and leadership is the same thing?
Probably. Or maybe I'm someone who can fold T-shirts and manage a team of 2,000 in one day.
What you're saying is textbook. And I say it because this is my field of research. It's a textbook way of how to create a cultivating, collaborating culture that actually is conducive to innovation. And it starts with the leader, because leaders and cultures are two faces of the same coin. And that's... Okay, so let me step back a bit, right? Let's talk about our region, right? The Middle East. We're talking about the entire kind of this patch of the world. One of the reasons why I went into this venture is, and again, this is sort of scientific, as research papers and so on and so forth, but I want to take your anecdotal kind of view on it. Lacks everything you mentioned in cultures and mostly in leadership. Now, when I say lack, that doesn't mean it's non-existent. Obviously it is, and you have hard, concrete evidence to that and everything that you've mentioned. But it's not proliferated enough. It's not kind of widespread enough. So it becomes common. So something in me is like, it aches my heart when stories like this are the outliers and people's like, wow, they should be in the normal. You know what I mean? Like, this is something that kind of bugs me every day. What do you think about that?
I moved in 2006. I thought I was here for a year. The reason I stayed was my team. And it was because I saw that there was another way that they can learn leadership. Because I was taught by the best leaders. I've had the best managers. I've also had the worst ones. You learn from the best.
Good. Juxtaposition is good, right?
Absolutely. I learned from the best and I learned from the worst. But I've had more of the best. And I thought, am I going to leave those poor, amazing, talented people alone at the mercy of a bad leader? Or am I going to show them true leadership so they can become better leaders?
That was your deciding factor?
That was the reason.
Wow.
I saw that people were getting promoted because of religion, because of nationality. When the first question in an interview was, where are you from? Right? It's very telling. When the first question they ask you when they meet you is, where are you from? It's very upsetting for someone who's not from the culture or the religion of that company. You've already told them you're inferior without telling them, right? So I was building the next generation of leaders in the region, right? It wasn't about me anymore. I was going to lead for 10 years, and then I was going to hand the baton over, right? But I'm going to hand it over to them, this next generation. So that's why I stayed. Because I felt exactly what you said. There weren't enough good leaders. I can't say that about the region today. I can't. We're not outliers anymore. And that's great to hear.
Absolutely.
There are so many great leaders in the market today.
Was the balance tipped or not yet?
Yes, it's tipped.
Okay.
100%. It's tipped. And not by force. I think that we've had leaders, especially the second generation owners, who went to universities that taught them a certain style, and they were ready to pick that up. I give them the credit, right? They wanted to learn. They wanted to manage in a different way. But also I get to meet some leaders who are much older than I am. And I am so in awe of how they lead, how they listen. Maybe also because I'm being more and more exposed to Saudi Arabia. And I'm seeing a lot of that leadership in Saudi Arabia from people who are 20 years, 30 years older than I am. And they're just incredible. They've built these incredible organizations based on listening, based on kindness. Maybe they're not being promoted enough, but they exist. Maybe just we've not had the podcasts that talked about that.
To amplify it, yes.
They're not very comfortable speaking as much as others are.
Yes.
So we don't hear their stories. But you do see it. You see it a lot more now. It's become an outlier now to be that single owner of a business where you want things done a certain way.
In a command-and-control way.
Very, very few. Very few. And these are the worst companies to work for.
I agree with everything you said, and I've seen it myself as well in my professional career here in the UAE. And I also echo what you're saying. And I was just, a few days back, I was listening to Fadi Ghandour and his Harvard Business Review interview, it's a bit old, 2017.
I love Fadi.
It's the way he describes how he was conscious, just from the very early age of Aramex, about the culture. And the way he described the organizational culture, the traditional way, and how it's just doesn't work, and it has to be federations. And the decision, it's amazing. I'm after him to get him to sit on the seat, so hopefully I'll be able to do it soon. Because I think that is also a gold mine that has to be amplified in the right way. But part of me is also very pragmatic, extremely realist.
Yes.
And I have to be sure that we don't only amplify the good without making sure that we put a spotlight on the gaps. Now,
sorry, but Fadi is very pragmatic too. So we talk about these things, but we are P&L owners.
Yes.
In the end.
No, what I mean by that is, and by the way, to your point, this is conducive and even a major driver for a healthy P&L. Come on, the market's the judge, right? And if you have a workforce that, like exactly what you mentioned, they have ideas, they can innovate. I mean, this will translate into economic prosperity and growth for the organization, 100%, no questions about it.
Well, look at your P&L. You've got revenue.
Yeah.
And then you've got labor cost.
Yes.
Or G&A cost. And then comes CapEx, everything else, and then your profitability, right? Let's look at revenue. Innovation will drive revenue.
100%.
Right? Innovation will drive what you open, what new lines of business.
Growth, right?
Growth. Then you have costs of labor. It's easier to retain a customer. It's easier to keep an employee than to hire a new employee or go out and get a new customer.
Yes.
And that's the issue with the internet companies, right? That they keep churning through customers, churning through employees, and that's very costly.
Of course, customer acquisition is the highest thing.
So in innovative companies, normally your cost of labor is about 6%. And if you build a good reputation for a business, you're not spending as much on marketing.
Yeah. Maximum 3%, 5%.
4%, 5 instead of 12 and 15 and
sometimes 30
or 100.
yes.
Right? So think about it that way. So it is pragmatic. And I'd be probably not being very honest if I said that I'm doing this just to be altruistic or, kind to the world.
There is that, of course, but that's not mutually exclusive with...
That's what I'm saying. They catch up with one another.
Yes.
Right? And I love Fadi's idea of, you called it federations. So I called it communities, right? And the community cannot be of one nationality. That was very critical for me. That they all had to come together from different functions, but they came together around something they were interested in, related to the business or outside of the business. So if they love to ride bikes together, then they're going to bring that to the office and likely work better together.
Interesting.
But it could be also something they're interested in the company.
Yes.
They could be people who care more about international expansion, for example.
Certain products, certain activities.
Exactly. So you put them together and you build by community or committee, however you want to call that. And that's how you grow it. And for them to become committees naturally versus you forcing it is the best approach, because then you're not the one steering. They're steering. Yes. It's their ideas.
And by the way, that's
it's
even
their
more,
success.
That's more, how do I say it? That's even easier on the leader. I mean, you would have less and less and less time to work and do things, and things will be happening for you.
It's also their accountability.
Yeah, of course.
So it's also if it goes wrong, and that's critical, I have to mention
100%,
that.
Yeah.
A business that has reward has to have accountability.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times in this market, we love a reward system, but we as employees, we love the reward. We've been taught, well done, grading system,
yes,
89, 90, you're number 1, you're number 3, you're number 5. You know, so they grow up in a culture where they need to be told constantly, you're amazing, right? I'm happy to say you're amazing as long as you're ready to hear you're not amazing on this specific task.
But that's also can be taught.
General.
That can be taught, emotional intelligence, right?
Yes, but we have an issue with accountability.
There is, because we are a nation, and that is also well studied in this part of the world, that we are conflict-avoiding nation. So we hate conflict, right? And if I come,
true.
If someone comes to me and tells me, Osama, what you're doing here is awful. Now, my personality, and this is because I am like that, I get so excited because that's the only way I can learn. If he tells me, oh, wow, what you're doing is nice, I'm like, okay, what do I do with that? Okay, I'll keep on doing it, but that's not growth, right? That's stagnation. But I know for a fact, and again, because I'm a very abrasive person when it comes to sort of comments and the way I give my comments to people, I know for a fact that it doesn't work with our people. I mean, our nations here are extremely, let's say, conflict avoidant. You know, they hate conflict.
It best, but that's a big issue. It's probably the one skill that has been difficult to teach managers. How to sit in a room with another peer or somebody above them or somebody on their team or anyone in the organization and tell them what the problem is and deal with it one-on-one and not talk to someone else about it, right? Because again, culture.
Yes.
The worst element of culture is gossip.
Which ruins trust, right?
It's the cancer of an organization.
But that's also enabled by leaders who actually listen and enable and, you know, they encourage
gossip. Correct. So when you put two people together and you say, or somebody is about to tell you about an issue they have with someone else, and you say, wait right there, don't say anything, let me call that person. And you tell them what you're about to tell me, but I'm happy to sit in this meeting. Then you force them out of their comfort zone. And this is probably the last area that I have yet to tackle, believe it or not. I'm glad you brought it up. I get them books. I let them watch YouTube videos. We do trainings. We do it in practice. But it's conflict resolution is, for me, one area that we fail at.
Maybe we shouldn't fight it. Maybe we should encourage it. Encourage conflict. What do you think?
You're being abrasive now.
So here's my thought.
Controversial.
Maybe I'm a bit contrarian. I know that. But what I'm trying to say is, and this is, I've tested it a few times because I do projects here, and with one of my clients, he also had this problem with his leadership. Extreme lack of confrontation and conflict avoidance. So not even, like, if there's a conflict, they just let time and they don't speak to each other, and then all of a sudden by chance and something happens. And I know that there was a CFO and a CMO. No, it was the head of sales and head of marketing. Classic. They were always having this touch, and then they didn't even speak. And obviously this trickled down to performance and brand awareness and all that sort of stuff at the company. So when the investor came to me and said, what do I do? I've done everything. I was like, let me try. So we came here and I said, I want you to have conflicts. This is a conflict-friendly zone. However, you're here, that's the issue that we have a conflict on. Don't mix. Let's separate and let's have a conflict on this, fight on this, debate on this, argue on this, as long as I don't feel that it's my person that's being attacked. And the moment, of course, that's not just words. It has to be done in a setting where people can experientially feel it. It actually made a difference. And people started being able to not just accept, but understand, because it went into a philosophical sense of being rather than doing. And that's why one of the things that I always say when it comes to emotional intelligence, leadership, culture, you cannot train people to do it. It's not about training. There's a much deeper construct here, which is dealing with their values and basic assumptions. And if you're bringing that to their awareness, then things happen. But if you keep on training something, they don't know what they don't know. It's, I always say this, you don't know what you don't know. It's unconscious incompetence that they don't know. So if you're trying to teach that incompetence, it's unconscious. How would you teach it? You know what I mean? So sometimes being abrasive and actually touching it head on, at least in my cases, it worked. And in our culture, because I don't like to label and stigmatize, but let's say the West. When I deal with people from the UK or the US or Netherlands, I never had these issues. Because I could slaughter someone in a meeting and then we go out and have coffee and absolutely nothing is happening, because there's an element in their culture which is it's okay for them to have conflicts, and that's a macro cultural level, not a national, not a organizational cultural level. But that's how I feel about it. So what do you think about actually tackling it head on instead of avoiding it?
I'm very Germanic. I've worked more in German companies than any companies in my career. So if you ever read a review about me, that everything would be amazing, and then there would be this one line: she's very confrontational about her opinions. But that's how I was taught.
But that's good. That's a compliment, isn't it?
I had to work on that. I had to tone it down a bit.
To adapt.
To this culture. Because in a German organization, no one takes it personal.
Yeah, 100%.
So if you said, I really didn't like the campaign, I think we can take it in a different direction. And how about 1, 2, 3?
Yeah.
That creative person does not take it personally.
They don't defend their effort.
It doesn't become, I'm a bad designer, or she said I'm a bad designer. They hear things I didn't say, right? And also, many a times, it doesn't come with options. It's just a criticism, right? You have to be careful. When you give feedback, give it with options, right? I don't like this. I recommend 1, 2, 3. And don't take it personally. It's not personal. It's about the business. And when we leave here, it's just work. It's not life. Going back full circle to how we started. When work becomes life and life becomes work, and I identify my whole being with what I do, then it blows up, because you just touched me at my core, right? And we can't stigmatize, because in Dubai or in the UAE, we have so many nationalities, right? We have all kinds of nationalities.
100%, yeah.
And now more and more Europeans are coming in and so on. And some from cultures that we're having to learn. Let's say Russians have a very different approach as well. So we're having to work with very different cultures to the ones we've ever gotten used to.
Yeah.
So from my experience, I can deal with someone from the US, someone from Europe, someone from India, Pakistan, etc. Now I'm having to learn about the new nationalities that have come into our fold, right? And that's exciting.
It is.
I find it very exciting.
Yes.
I find it like a new way of learning.
Because you can't learn it in books, can you?
No, you can't. Exactly. You can't learn. But I think that I had to also tone it down a bit, right? And I realized that my approach was a bit too much for this region.
Right.
And like you said, it's okay to embrace that we're different.
Yes.
There isn't right or wrong. There is getting the end result done. We want a good campaign. You and I want a good campaign. We're in this together. You're creative, I'm marketing, right? So let's work together. Let's present it together as our own, and let's win awards with it. Let's get good results on sales with it. Let's win this together. I think that works better than I didn't like the campaign. It looked terrible.
Well, you see, if you just say that and stop, yes, I mean, objectively speaking, whether you're abrasive, whether you're emotional, whatever it is that you're coming from, usually, so what do I do with that? Especially if you're a leader, because it comes with power dynamics, it comes with authority and so on and so forth. So you have to be, I mean, with greater power comes greater responsibility, right? So that's understandable and it makes sense. And obviously you have to be let's say courteous of the differences in cultures. But we go back to the organizational culture and how deliberately you're designing it. And I call it even architecting it and crafting it. And if you have this sense of, no, whenever someone is critiquing anything, know that he's not critiquing you as an individual. Yes, you're a creative person. Yes, you worked on this graphic or this video for God knows how, sleepless nights, and you've been away from your family. Don't get attached to it personally. On the contrary, if someone gave you a criticism, that's room for improvement. So detach from it and don't defend your efforts. So this is one. But on the other side, like you said, as a culture, so this is the first kind of articulation of what do you do when this happens. But on the other side as well, never, ever, ever critique without providing a solution. Because it's easy to critique, it's harder to create. So if that is articulated in the organizational culture, which is really, like you said, it's a set of feelings. I love this. I'm going to plagiarize it, by the way. It's a set of feelings in the organizations that makes it distinct from other organizations. And those feelings, when they're put together, it's like ingredients. Alone, okay, fine. Together, you have this beautiful, distinct signature dish, right? You always have to come up with, okay, I think, and this is how it is. And no one defends an opinion. Because at the end of the day, the last part is, we have one common goal. We have a bullseye, and it's this, my bullseye is the same as your bullseye, is the same as his bullseye, is the same as her bullseye. And if we have differences in different bullseyes, then that's a different story.
So think about why they reject the criticism. It's fear. I go back to the fear point.
It is fear.
It's fear to lose the job.
Yes.
It's fear to get a bad reputation in front of the boss. It's fear to, end up without anything and maybe not getting paid. There are a lot of fear factors.
But also there's an element of ego.
There's ego, true. But I find more and more we're in a world where people are feeling very uncomfortable. There are less jobs to go around than they did before. It's becoming crowded, as it should be. In the past, you just applied for a job and there weren't that many of you, so they took you. Today, everyone presents a portfolio. Every time you put up a job, you get 1,000 applicants. Yep. And people can work remotely, flexibly. They can do it from anywhere. You can outsource it. There are many options. There's AI, right?
Yes, so 100%.
There's a fear element. Am I going to get replaced?
Yeah.
Right? So And I say this not so lightly because it's something I need to remind myself of all the time. To deliver it with empathy. And I'm saying this because I need to remind myself. Because now we need to also talk about reality.
Yes.
There's a business to run, right? I can't sit all day and play this role of let's sit together, let's be friends. There is no time, right? There's just limited time. I can't hire 200-300 people in head office because we need to all get along. And by the way, we're too busy doing those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to cut to the chase, either sometimes let someone go or do the tough decisions. So I'm just kind of bringing it back to reality.
Yes.
That we talked about all the unicorns and rainbows and Lucky Charms, right? But the reality is it's probably more Cheerios every day, right?
The harsh ones.
Yeah. But that's good, okay? Creating a sense of consistency, getting straight to the point. But I have to always remind myself, deliver it with empathy, deliver it with a bit of understanding that maybe that person was hired for the job, did not have the skill set. We're asking them to do something they can't do.
Yeah.
So let's be understanding that maybe they just can't deliver on that.
How do you know?
So eventually, you know who can and can't.
You have to have the correct senses,
The hard part is
right?
if you were the one who hired them in the first place.
That's it.
Right? So you can't blame someone else someone else did the hiring. You did the hiring. So the advice is to take more time up front when you're hiring the candidates, more for their sake than for our sake. So we're not putting the wrong employee in, or the right employee in the wrong job, right? Or the other way around, the wrong employee in the right job. Let's try to avoid that. Let's match it properly. Take more time. A lot of the times we're trigger happy. We just want to fill the role.
Yeah.
And then 3 months down the line, everyone lost.
Yeah.
Right? So we see that a lot. But conflict resolution amongst managers and employees, peer-to-peer, has to get better.
Yeah.
Company to company. Agency with client. Client with agency. Right? Not, you know what? I think it's a great campaign. And then they tell everybody else it isn't. That's not helping anyone.
No, that's cheating. That's blatant cheating.
Exactly. Yeah. But I do believe the generations are changing. Again, it depends what education they've had, what exposure they've had. The less exposure they've had, the tougher it's going to be for them. The more exposure they've had, the easier it's been. If they've studied in more than one country, even traveled to more than one country,
100%.
It's easier. If they haven't, there's nothing wrong with that. That's okay.
Yeah.
It's financial. It's not because they chose not to, but you're going to have to get them there. You're going to have to handhold them because you hired them.
Yes.
They're your responsibility now, right? So easier said than done is what I'm trying to say.
I don't know if it's my mind and this is how I work, but when you were talking about empathy, first, I have a problem with the word empathy. It's overused, not the actual implementation of it. It's just that people, like if you ask 10 people now from the professional, from any profession, from any industry, what does empathy mean? You'll give you 10 answers. One of them for sure, thinking like you're in the shoes of someone else or whatever, putting yourself in someone else's position and so on and so on. But people don't really understand what empathy is. What is empathy?
First of all, it's a moment in time, right? So it's not a statement. Example, somebody on your team is from Syria. They happen to be from a part of Syria that just got hit. It's an example.
Yeah.
But a real example.
Yes.
Over the next 3 to 5 days, they're not going to be in the best mood. They're worried about their family.
Yeah.
They're worried about their home, or they invested in a home that now disappeared, right? So they're off a bit, right? Understanding that when maybe they're not completely focused over the next 5 days, pre-understanding that, right? So making it your job to know what's happening in the world and how it affects your employees. That's what I mean by empathy. I'm not talking about a blanket empathy. I'm not saying you always should put yourself in the employee's shoes. You always have to think about all the hardships they're going through. We're all going through hardships. You know, we all have our own hardships. You can't just blanket empathy. But sometimes it needs to be awarded. People are going through something exceptional. The kid is sick. They just had twins and they've not slept a night in the last 2 weeks, 2 months, and they're exhausted. He's exhausted. His wife is exhausted. You know, that's empathy. Yeah. I've had twins. I can empathize, right? Maybe someone else who's not had twins can't empathize.
That's true.
When he walks in exhausted, I'm looking at him thinking, been there, buddy. I know, hang in there. The 4 years will pass.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I have 2, not twins.
Yeah.
But 2 is not double 1. It's 10 times 1.
Exactly. And twins is the same. It's not 2.
Twins, I can't even imagine.
Yeah. Well, I used to say it's 4, but it's what I'm saying is because I've had the twins, I could always relate.
Yeah.
Because I've done 9 IVFs. If somebody's going through an IVF, she doesn't have to tell me what she's going through. You know, I can feel her body drama, the anticipation of whether it's going to succeed, not succeed, coming into the office when it didn't succeed, or calling in sick because it didn't. I can empathize. So I can't always empathize. I can empathize in situations that I've gone through, but I can't empathize when I can't relate at all.
Yeah.
It would be a lie if I can. My hope is someone else on my team, another leader on the team, and anyone can be a leader, can pick that up and say, I know what it's like.
Wow.
Right? It doesn't have to be me. It can be someone else. To say, kindness, please. I've been there. Divorce is hard, or separation, whatever they're going through, right? As you have more and more employees in different age groups, you're going to see more and more life issues that you've gone through or other people have gone through, and they're not easy. We're human.
Yes.
They impact us. They impact our work. We're not robots. We're not machines. We can't be on 365 days a week. We'll burn out. So that bit of kindness goes a long way.
Wow, that's powerful. And the way you've put it is it's a collective empathy. It's not just you. So I wouldn't, in a million years, obviously, as a man, empathize with a pregnant woman, for example. And that's why I need to have someone else. If I lost sight of the way I'm dealing with, let's say, a pregnant woman, to someone come and tell me, pay attention, what you're doing has this effect. And then I was like, whoa, okay, I didn't know that. And that's important. And
like putting chairs in the stores for pregnant women, right? It had to come from another pregnant woman in the office to say, we have 6 on the shop floor. They're standing up all day. They have swollen feet. We need to get them chairs.
Yeah.
One of the best pieces of advice I ever got.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely. I'm like, how did I not think of that? Absolutely. Send the chairs to the stores. No pregnant woman above X months is allowed to be on the shop floor on her feet. She needs to be sat on the chair, comfortable, take as many breaks as she wants. But that didn't come from me. That came from actually a man on the team who's gone through a few pregnancies with his wife.
Of course, yeah. And that's the important part is that environment that the leader has created that allowed for those type of ideas. People always think of ideas, and it just crossed my mind now. People always think of ideas that can be commercialized, that can impact the top line, that can have innovations, that can contribute to growth. What about the other types of ideas that actually innovative, but as simple as putting chairs at the times where really people need it? And that's, if the environment does not allow for that, then that person who came with, who thought of this idea, God knows if he kept it to himself or actually voiced it out to you, and then you were able to action it. So that's the power, actually, not importance, the power of environment.
Any company I've been in, I've had something called our voice. So it's not your voice, it's our voice.
Yeah.
It's anonymous, because here we like anonymity. We don't like to put our name next to...
Again, conflict avoidance.
And sending in your thoughts. Your thoughts can never be about another employee. Your thoughts are about how to make the business better. What is it that we're not doing? And only I see them. No one else sees them. The best ideas I've ever gotten were from our voice. Because it's anonymous.
That's a testament.
Because they can say what they want.
Yeah.
The best ideas we've gotten.
But how do you recognize the person who gave the idea and probably reward them? How would you do that?
They don't want that. And if they want to be known, believe me, they're going to let you know. That was my idea.
That was my idea.
You know, they'll let you know. But again, they love the business enough that it's for the collective good of everyone, right?
Yes.
It's not about being recognized.
But that's only
because you're being recognized enough.
But that's only if you get the buy-in, if you get the value alignment, if you get the, how do I say, the emotion, not the emotional attachment, but some sort of a passion to what you do, for what you do, if that makes sense. And that only happens if the environment, if the organization first created that thing that allowed me to be passionate about what I do, correct?
Absolutely.
So if we look at, so you talked about empathy as a contextual, as a cross-section in time where it's an event, there's a pregnant woman, there's someone who has a catastrophe happening back home for him, and that's very important. And there's another type of empathy which is cultural. So the Russian, the Jordanian, the German, the whatever, that we need to know that there are different types of those ways of these people behaving and communicating, and understand that not everything is an attack and not everything is a welcoming sort of message to kind of come closer. Don't you think with all of that, if we pay attention to it at this level, we'll be walking on eggshells most of the time? And then we'll let go of freedom, we'll let go. When I say freedom, I don't mean the national freedom, political freedom. I mean like freedom to actually express our opinions without filters, without sort of...
Yes, 100%. And if it becomes that culture, it becomes very annoying.
And toxic, probably.
Toxic, it's no longer fun.
Because people become softer and softer and softer, and then the least thing will be like...
Yeah, but that's not what we're saying. Because what we didn't talk about as well is when somebody does not perform, they go, right? Because we talked earlier about the lower 15%.
Yes.
Right? That's not empathy. That's, you're not doing your job. You got to go. Right? When you add that to the mix, it stops being this Lucky Charms environment, right? So no, it's not all, oh, poor guy, he stole from the business, he was going through a hard time, it's okay. No, it's not okay. He stole from the business, it's black or white, he's got to go, right? You can't impose empathy there and say, but his dad was sick. I get that. It's horrible. But you don't steal. Yeah. That's a no, right? So it's not empathy at all costs, is what I'm trying to say. There's a hard line where if the business is impacted, the culture is impacted, the ethics of the business are impacted, you don't belong. You gotta go.
So a business and employees are not family.
They are a unit. A family is a unit. it's a unit. I don't see it as family. You could be friends.
Yes.
You could say they're like family to me. But what I see is because it's momentary, and maybe I've just left too many businesses, and I've seen a lot of people who at one point their company was family, but then they left and it wasn't anymore. I'd say it's more of a place where you build possibly your best friends, your best contacts, right? So if I think about some of the best companies I've worked in are the ones that I've made the best friends, the best peers. They're still my best peers. And I thank the company for allowing me to have met them. But I wouldn't say we were family. We slept on each other's couches. We still do. We do things together. We practice for interviews together. We do a lot of things together. We work on projects together. But that doesn't make you family.
I like that, because anyone who says as a leader, oh, you're like family to me, I immediately, the first thing that comes into my mind is, okay, buddy, that's not true. Because the moment I do, you will never fire your son. But if I don't, even if he does whatever he does, or she, or your daughter, whatever she does, you will never fire them from the home, not from work, obviously, from home. But you would. So, and that's when Simon Sinek said it. I'm sure you've seen those videos of him saying, oh, would you fire your son? Would you? Who said they're our sons? They're not our sons. And I remember one time, one of my employees came to me and was like, oh, look at this, like family. I was like, no, they're not family. And work is not home. Home is home and work is work. You want to make work home, open up your startup, get a couple of bean bags and foosball, probably make it your
But it won't make it family either.
It won't make it family.
No.
And it should. And in reality, it shouldn't, especially if you're dealing with someone outside of family. So in my case, I'm dealing with my wife, I'm dealing with my family. So that's fine initially. But then once I grow and I have this number of employees, I cannot lie to them and tell them, you're to me like my daughter or my son, because it doesn't work that way. And it's a lie.
It's actually not good for business.
And it's not good for business because they will become complacent. They will.
So if I care about them, and I care about their families, which I do, then I would not treat it like family. Because if I did, then we wouldn't talk about tough issues, we'd skirt over them, we'd look the other way, we'd do all kinds of bad things, right? If we came in and said, this is a business that feeds our family, and we care about it, and we all want to be friends here, maybe 80% of us will be friends and the others possibly won't, then that's the best outcome.
Yes.
And the very, very best outcome is that when they leave the organization, they stay friends.
And they still love.
I love when I hear that they're still meeting together, they're still having dinners together, that now their wives or their kids or whatever are growing up together and they met 10, 20 years ago. That makes me super happy. That now they've become kind of a part of a bigger community that is there to support them when they're not at home, right? And it's easy to say this when you're in Dubai, away from your bigger extended family, right? Imagine if we're saying this and we're in Lebanon, or we're in Jordan, and where everyone has like 75 cousins. You think they have time to call anybody at work family? They've got enough family.
Yes, true.
You know, more than they need, right?
A barbecue is probably a conference.
Yes, exactly. So, you know, you think that would happen. It happens more here because we miss family. Right? And we're yearning and want it so badly. True. But the minute you bring that into the equation versus friendship or other things that also mean family, right? Community, care.
Yes.
You know, Christine and I were talking about an example where one of our employees was very ill, how we all got together and we created shifts to be there for her through her treatment. And at that moment, in that moment, for those 2 months, we were her family. We were definitely her family. We were all she had. right? And she needed us to be her family, the 20 of us who were there for her, because she was holding on to dear life. Her 2 kids were too young back in the Philippines, and she needed us then and there. If she was back home, probably the aunt, the cousins, whatever, would have done what we did. But in that moment, we all stepped in. I started a WhatsApp group, and we all filled in our slots.
That's beautiful.
When, alhamdulillah, she was well and good.
Oh God, I was afraid to ask.
No, alhamdulillah, she's amazing.
You should start with, they should lead with that.
La, habibti, she's well. She's amazing. Her positivity is like no other. But what it did was it made us very close to one another. It made others feel like if this ever happened to me, God forbid, I know that there's a group of people who are going to be there for me.
Yeah.
If my mom can't be here, my aunts can't be here, my sister, there's a group that can fill in. But after that phase ended, we remained very close. It definitely had a mark on the organization in a positive way. People were cooking for her. We brought her kids here. There were all kinds of things that helped contribute to that family feeling. But it was a moment in time. And I believe in that. I believe that in a moment in time, maybe you need to step in and do that. But it wouldn't have lasted a year or 2 years. But it created a bond that you can never, ever undo. Never. Amongst us who got together and did this, right? Nothing can replace that.
Sometimes tough times creates the most beautiful meaning.
Yep.
Especially when it comes to relationships.
I mean, Christine and I are an example of that. I mean, we were in the same group. We were there for her. And that bond stays. We don't talk about it almost ever.
And that's the best part,
there.
right?
It's in the background. We were there together. We did something for someone else. Not for me or for her, for someone else together.
Genuinely.
Yeah.
And you can't make this up.
You can't. It was our weekends, it was our evenings, and no one complained.
You hear about these stories a lot, but in countries where I would say the demographic of the workforce are cohesive. So they're all Germans, they're all this or they're all that. It's not as common here. I mean, a friend of mine got diagnosed with a chronic disease late in his age. And the workforce did not account for that. And they said, oh, we wish you well. And then obviously they let them go.
It's horrible.
And that's horrible.
Horrible.
That's horrible. And how does that, I mean, and this is the curveball, Nisreen, and this is what I want to kind of touch upon with you a little bit. In this part of the world, and I was born and raised here, I love this place to pieces, and there's no but after this. This is like an enviable place to be in. And I feel so lucky that my dad came here in 1971 and I was born here. So it's like a dream, right? I was lucky on all metrics. The thing that and this is part of my venture, is to bring awareness to this concept, which is how can we make everything you said now, with all of its, I wouldn't say positive or negatives, because everything is positive. Even the abrasiveness of the business world is a positive thing, because you need stress to grow. You need to work out in a gym to grow your strength and fitness. So it's not like everything is rosy, and like you said, that's not what I mean by at all. But the problem is, how do you know? And I'll tell you what I mean by that. In this part of the world, 90% of the population is expats, like you and I. And as employees, we come here with aspirations, with motivations, with dreams, and we come here and we're able to achieve them almost from the first 6 months. We go get loans from the bank, we buy our Mercedes and have 6 years of loans, and we buy an apartment and 25 years of mortgage, and so on and so forth. And then we go work for someone. And that someone, with all the good intentions in the world, don't know that he's control-oriented, that he is risk-averse, that he doesn't empower, that he micromanages, that he disenfranchises everyone, that he lets loose gossips and people talking about each other, and everyone comes to him and tells him something. But performance is double-digit. Company is growing for him. And people, because he's the boss, people in front of him are happy. They're always agreeable. They're always positive, okay? And they don't leave. Why? Because of the aforementioned reasons. They have lifestyle, they have this, they have that, they have visa. We mentioned visa. And not everybody has these new legislations and policies about visa restrictions and lack thereof. So they keep on working. They put their head down, they bite the bullet, and they keep on working. So the boss don't know. To him, oh, I have two metrics. People in front of me are happy, they're smiling, they're always kind of agreeable. Yes, sir. And on my CFO, on the Excel sheets, on my dashboards, on my CRM and what's not, everything is double-digit growth. You know, our regression is good, our trend is good, our prospect and forecast is good. So I'm sure everybody's happy. What do you think? How do we deal with that? And that's, by the way, that's more common than you and I can think or wish for.
You can't teach someone self-awareness. It's a tough one if they don't want to recognize it, right? And it's tough to work for a boss who's not self-aware of the shortfalls or the blind spots. They don't read books. They don't keep learning. You know, it's a tough one. I don't believe that employees don't have a choice. They always have a choice. They can sell the Mercedes. They can sell the apartment. They can live in a rental. They can drive a smaller car, a rental.
As they should.
If they value their happiness.
Yeah.
It's their choice. In my opinion, if you're not happy, vote with your feet. Walk. But to hold the company responsible for your happiness is an error. It's a mistake. The company is growing double digit. It means they're getting a bonus.
Yeah.
It means they're doing well. Somewhere, some way, somehow, they're benefiting from that growth. Maybe people love their business card because in the market, everyone knows them.
Yeah.
They're part of something big. Maybe this boss is very well known, whatever the case may be. But if you're searching for that environment where you're going to be working for someone maybe who's very different and you want to try it, and you should try it. And my only advice is don't work in that kind of company too long where you normalize it. Don't work in any company where you end up normalizing it. 3 to 5 years is about enough. But people have choices. The mistake is that a lot of the times employees feel they don't have choices because of the debt that they put themselves in, which is something organizations should do a lot to educate employees about. And be cautious. Watch out for signs of employees getting a lot of debt and have a word with them. But they have choices. They can live a simpler life. Dubai is not what it used to be. Today, you have a choice to live a lot simpler than when it was 10 years ago.
That's true.
Right?
I agree.
So if that bothers you so much, make that sacrifice. But I believe you can't have it all. I'm not of the belief you can have it all.
Yeah.
And I don't know, you want to live in a villa, not an apartment, as an example.
Yeah.
Right? And with that comes working in a job that you hate. The trade-off is you're living in a villa.
It's a compromise.
Versus living in an apartment. I'm using it as an example. There's nothing wrong with
There's always
living
compromises. Yeah.
But living in, say, a lesser rent or an easier rent, and working in an environment that you absolutely love, or a job you absolutely love, with a boss that you love, an environment that you love. But it means that maybe the home is smaller, you have less discretionary income, you can travel less, etc. That's a personal choice. And every person has that personal choice to make.
Let's take it one level up, at an economic level, right? Our region is one of the wealthiest regions because of the governments and because of the leadership and because of the choices and the policies that they pass on, and they keep on growing. the national agendas, the facilitation of all sorts of transactions, safety, medical, education, trade, all of that stuff, right? And that's no easy feat. And that has to be recognized first and foremost because it is something it's commendable, right? And that's what makes this place an enviable place. Realistically speaking, there's a massive gap in innovation production. I go back to innovation. If you look at all of the metrics, whether Western here, we're not producing as much innovation. And at least from my naive realism, from the way I see things, it doesn't look like things are changing in a way that should be changed. So especially with the ingredients that we have and the drivers and the catalysts that we have. So everything is there. The drivers for innovation, technically speaking, from an academic perspective, are four: government, talent, capital, and culture. We talked about government, and obviously this is one of the most trusted, most kind of service-oriented governments in the world. 5 stars, you go to a government entity here, you think like you're going to a Burj Al Arab. It's incredible, right? If you had to go anyway, everything is done online, right? And digital and no papers and so on and so forth. And then capital, obviously there's no shortage of capital. Talent, this is a talent magnet. So the final thing that's where I think you and I agreed that there's this element of culture. And I don't talk about the macro culture, right? The national culture. That's amazing. That's hospitable. That's friendly. That's that. So that's not that. I'm talking about this, which is the corporate culture, which is stifled by how do we know? And one of the things that I've found is that people hate to talk about culture, especially because of what you mentioned, and you smoothly moved from culture to leadership, because culture and leadership are two faces of the same coin. So if you want to talk about culture and analyze it and investigate it, then you're talking about leadership. And guess who should commission a project to look at culture? It's the leader. And then goes into the egocentricity, you go into the pride, you go into the confrontation avoidance, you go into all of those stuff. And that's an extremely complicated matter that is like a deadlock that we're beating around the bush. And if we don't face it and deliberately address it, I feel like we're so stifled to a point of standstill when it comes to the innovation front at a global stage. You being an entrepreneur, an executive, and a human being who loves this place, what do you think about this first, the existence of it? I don't want to assume that it exists, but this is my, again, view. And what do you think of handling it?
We used to be consumers, less creators. Now we're creators. And if you look at the basics, it started off with the basics, right? We used to bring raw materials, maybe package them here. Now we're creating them. I'd look at different segments that we're in. We have opportunities now to develop them, market them in our local area, but also now it's become a lot easier for us to put a made in Dubai signature and sell it anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
So I would say that I'm really impressed by the speed of change in the UAE in terms of our ability to innovate and create and sell globally. I look at my areas, let's say, fashion, entertainment, franchise. We have the ability to dream and say, we can build a franchise from the Middle East and take it to a franchise show in New York and sell it globally. Nobody's going to say, oh yeah, it succeeded in Dubai, it's too far away, I won't take it for the US. Quite the opposite, it has a cachet, right? So there's more interest in innovation as a market because we also have so many exhibitions near us in the trade center and otherwise. We're seeing a lot of things that have come globally.
Yeah.
And there's this fire we've got that says, I can do it better. We can do it better. In Dubai, we say, we can do this better. Abu Dhabi is the same.
Yes.
We can do this better.
And Riyadh and Qatar.
Sharjah, art, we can do this better.
Absolutely.
Of course, Saudi Arabia is self-sufficient, but let's say here we need the world, right? So Saudi Arabia can rely on its 32 million people and be okay. More to come. Egypt can rely on its people and 100%. They can be okay. We can't be okay just producing for UAE. We need other nations globally, ideally. Speaking, yeah. But we have so many founders coming up saying, I can do this and I can do this globally, right? So Quetta Milk, as an example, he's great. He's developed a product that if you didn't know Mustafa, you would have thought the product was made anywhere in the world. It's so well packaged. And if I'm not mistaken, the last time I saw him, it was in the US. At least he started in Chicago. I'm not sure, it was on Amazon. But that's very cool for me to see that. And he's that kind of guy. When you think of Chris Fade with Fade Fit and his products, and they're in Australia now, you know, that's a big market for Chris. Again, he's one of those people who is an incredible creator. I've launched over 40 designers who are now global designers. They were worn in the Oscars.
Oh, wow.
Dima Ayad's outfit was worn by a woman who won an Oscar a few weeks ago. And
that's impressive.
I know. And Dima came to me and said, my dream is to be on a global platform. That's my dream. I said, we're going to make your dream come true. And we did, because we put it on Net-a-Porter and that woman bought it on Net-a-Porter. You know, and she bought it and she wore it to the Oscars. And it was the first time inclusive sizing was on a Net-a-Porter platform globally in 21 years. First time it happened out of Dubai. And it's sold in the US, right? So when I see all of those examples, and I can probably mention 20, 30, 40 more in tech and other areas, fintech, it's incredible what's happening in this region, right? And I can see Tabi, Tamara, any of those going anywhere in the world.
So you don't see any gap in innovation production?
Brands for less. They're going to be going to further.
But those are all consumer brands, which, by the way, I'm not saying it's non-existent. I mean, the UAE is ranked #1 in the region for innovation. And that's, again, it's crazy. Looking at the age of the country, again, the maturity of the business, the sophistication of the technology. I think what I'm trying to say is, pragmatically, if we compare ourselves with the likes of per million, normalized, so it's not just the likes of all of the other innovators in the world. So again, relatively speaking, when we juxtapose, when we put them next to each other, there is a pragmatic gap that doesn't remove the growth and that doesn't remove the current way of innovation or landscape of innovation. It's just that this gap is existent, and for the past 15 years, it's not closing.
I see it closing.
You do?
Definitely, 100%.
Why don't the Global Innovation Index see it closing? Because we're always ranked at 35, 32, 30, 35.
Maybe because also we're growing, like you said. So right. It's if maybe we looked at the number of innovations, just purely the number of innovations we have today versus 10, 15 years ago, we would have seen an absolute increase. But maybe if it's indexed as a % of growth or GDP, and that's growing, population's growing as a % of population, then we've not caught up on the percentage. But in absolute terms, we've definitely. Now, in areas, maybe we're less so in tech, maybe less so in certain areas that maybe India might be stronger in, and so on.
Fintech, medtech, edtech.
Yeah, but bio is increasing because the funding is going into bio. Yeah. More in tech because money is going into bio, into tech. Fintech, there was a lot of investment 10 years ago. All the fintech capital moved out of the region, and it's just come back in.
Why did they move out?
Because they kept looking and they didn't find anything worth looking at, so they exited the market. And because of the policies at the time. Possibly. I know the central bank is doing a lot. Yeah, but the central bank is doing a lot.
Yeah, it's changed now. Yeah.
Exactly. But you said we have access to capital. So we don't have access to capital. Capital is very difficult to get in this region.
No, I didn't say there's access to capital. I said there's an abundance of capital. There's a difference.
Okay.
And this is the kind of detour I wanted to take with you, because I know that you have, you're an investor and you have access to investors and so on and so forth. And all of the startups that I work with always complain about the investors. And all of the investors that are my friends, they always complain. Actually, I have one friend who actually quit investing because he said this is a lost game, and he actually was in the business for a longer time. And he says the founder's maturity is too low, and the founder is saying, oh, the investors are too controlling, and so on and so forth. So what's happening in that domain? Why are they fighting? Just get them in one room and give them toys and let them play.
No, I don't see that happening. The investors come in and they take a very much of a global investment approach. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, we are more of a private equity approach.
Right.
But we're early stage, right?
Maturity-wise, you mean?
Early stage financing.
Okay.
Right.
So
you mean a lot of the businesses
seed and
seed,
yeah. Okay.
So it's very early stage.
That's the hardest part here.
Exactly. So
as opposed to let's say Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is, I mean, percentage-wise...
Second, third, fourth rounds and so on. So this is the issue. So you're bringing in investment bankers to early stage businesses.
Right.
Right? They normally don't mix.
Bankers, yeah.
They don't mix.
No. You need angel investors, you need VCs.
And we don't have as many angel investors.
Although we have capital.
Yes, but the capital wants to be invested in real estate, if I should say.
Thank you.
Right?
I mean, they'd rather invest in crypto and not in an idea or an individual who's passionate. What gives?
So that, I don't have the answer. It could be being risk averse. It could be that we are a peer pressure culture.
Yeah.
It could be a bandwagon.
Loss of
everybody's in real estate. They want to be in real estate too, right? But
that's maturity,
definitely
isn't it?
there are more ideas, good ideas, and more good businesses than access to capital, 100%. And if we spoke about that, I'll say the gap is there. The banks don't give you loans.
Yeah.
Definitely
understandably so.
Yes, but not at affordable rates. Even when some businesses have been around for 5 years, they don't get capital and they can prove that they've brought in an income every year.
But you would understand why. I mean, you and I are expats. Again, we can travel tomorrow.
Yes.
If you're in the UK and you are from London, you're from there. I mean, there's something that the
bank
can...
You're not going there.
You're not going
there's
anywhere.
There's credit rating.
Yeah. So there is... I mean, that's why I'm saying the dynamic here is extremely unique and very... How do I say it? Precise, that if you don't look at it with a different lens and actually deliberately study it from all of its facets, whether it's the policy making and the government, whether it's the support, whether it's the culture and especially the corporate culture and how leaders are behaving and how they're deliberate about architecting their own cultures, and also the entrepreneur versus or founder versus investor relationship and how they look at each other. I mean, I said it before in another series. One friend of mine, he's a founder. He's like, Osama, my investor literally comes at my office, 8 a.m. on a Monday, asking where I am. Yeah. And I'm like, that's
not
crazy.
What an investor should do.
Shouldn't. I mean, where's the GP? Where's the LP? I mean, when I think it's something to do with how VCs. I mean, angel investors are angel investors. That's fine. But when you have a VC as a structured firm that has the LPs and the GPs, and the GPs actually are the ones who are functionally aware of the business itself and the startup, and can translate that technical terms of what those young kids are doing to that LP who's actually putting the money and so on and so forth in reports and everything else. Does that exist?
No. And that's why, unfortunately, if you want to start a business, if your family has money, if you've inherited money, if maybe you did well in real estate, but to do it on your own, it's tough.
And you can see the opportunity lost at an economic stage,
the number of failures of great businesses.
Just because they didn't have access.
Yes, and I mean, I don't have a problem calling it out. I think that we do need to do more about that, because when you look at employment and you look at rentals, when you look at all of the different elements of what's making this economy work, it's those SMEs. It's the guys who've gone out on a limb and rented a space and started a business and hired maybe not 30 employees, but maybe 20 employees. They add up, right? And one day that's going to be a bigger business and so on, but not without the support. It's not going to get there. And if we need a bit of interference, and I feel it will come because it's become a raised voice, but more and more.
How do you interfere? You can't, because it's some sort of a maturity rather than, in my mind, let's say who would interfere? Obviously someone in authority and power, and that's someone in the government or some entity in the government, right? But they can't force an investor. They can regulate.
Maybe it will be forced, because now that brands can come here direct, the businesses that were once very big, right, and they're sat on a lot of cash, are going to have to say, I'm going to have to now invest in businesses that are local.
Right.
Because I lost the big brands.
Oh, wow.
Right?
That's so some policy change.
That's coming, for sure. So if you think of big retailers, big groups, they will lose the brands that they've been living off of in the next 2 to 3 years. What do they do with that cash? They have a board that's saying that dollar needs to make 3.5.
Yes.
Some have already migrated to that. Majid Al Futtaim as a group, for example, they've done that. They've started investing in local businesses. They've done a lot of local investing, right? Because they need to diversify.
Yes.
They're not doing it just for support. They're banking on one of them exiting, doing well, etc., and so on. So it will come.
It will come. I mean, listen, I sometimes, again, I say, I know that I'm abrasive. I know I look at things with extreme pragmatism without looking at the other, let's say, contextual elements that feeds into the current state of affairs, especially when it comes to innovation. Maybe I'm a bit hasty in wanting to see things move as quickly as possible. And if there are no signs, like a sign of someone throwing seeds at a rocky soil is wrong, right? Yeah, they have to call out that this is wrong. Prepare the soil first, and then put the seeds. Don't keep on putting seeds without preparing the soil. So those are the things that kind of makes me want to kind of amplify this discussion as much as possible. So hopefully someone somewhere will inspire them and have them think about it and maybe dig deeper. And fine, maybe we're wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. I would love to be wrong. Like you said now, you're telling me that no, we are in those spaces, which is fashion, F&B, and others. And I know all of these brands that you mentioned, which I was like, oh yeah, right, I consume them, right? But then I go into fintech and I go to other radical innovations that actually change people's lives, not just at the fashion. I mean, fashion is good and art is good, and obviously we have to live with them, and that's important. But what about the necessities? What about the actual technologies? What about that app, that Kareem, another Kareem? Why don't we have 10 Kareems a year? Right? I mean, that's the thing. Why not? I mean, there's an element of innovation also, which is the number of unicorns per country normalized to 1 million. There's a massive gap between this part of the world and elsewhere. And guess what? When it comes to the average, let's say, per capita, or let's say the lifestyle, generally speaking, we're that much high with that much low. People are that much low with that much high when it comes to number of unicorns, for example. And obviously those are very quantitative measures to measure a nation's innovative and growth, but it is one, and we have to pay attention to them.
Well, I look at it in terms of progress. We have unicorns, and they're beginning to happen, and we're learning how to build them.
Yeah.
We didn't know how to build them before. Now we have Mudassir, we have people that, you can sit with and see what they do and learn from them. You can look at Noon and learn from them. So we have companies now that you can look at and say, this is how they're doing logistics, this is how they're hiring, this is how they're building an org structure, and it's working for them or not working for them. And I'm going to follow that and copy that, right? A lot of unicorns copied one another at one point or the other. It started with one, right? And then it built on that. I look at progress. And as long as there's progress, I'm excited and I'm optimistic, and there's progress.
I love your optimism. Nisreen, where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Not retired.
Nice. I like that. I
don't see myself retired. I see myself giving back more, definitely. Helping more, maybe in I don't want to say government, I want to say policy. More policy, definitely.
That's why you took your economy degree.
Yeah, I like economics a lot.
Yeah.
I like statistics a lot, and I like finance. Right, so
oh wow, a creative person who likes finance. Yes. That's a first timer.
I definitely that's a secret to success. When
that's unique.
Both sides of the brain, or 4 sides of the brain, work together. But I care a lot about politics and general geopolitics and how that shapes how we behave and how things are moving, how goods are moving, and oil and so on.
You're not going to run for office, are you?
No, no, I'm smarter than that.
Exactly.
But I like to be in policy. I feel like by then I would have seen enough of what is needed to create a economy for the next generation. Yes. I love making the youth feel hopeful. I love the youth. I've always been very youthful, very optimistic, very adopting of new technologies and new ways of doing things. So my goal would be, how can we make this a place where youth feel that this is their place to create, to innovate, to work, to create families, and they can do it in a sustainable way, right? So focus on youth, which means education. So this is why we've built the music schools. 10% of our kids are special needs. So you also can't have an economy that works without having an element of it that supports people with special needs, or as we call them, people of there's people of determination, there's people with special needs. They're not the same. Yeah. We give away scholarships to kids who are talented but can't afford it. We need to do more of that. So part of my policy, hopefully, would be
more people should do more of that.
Definitely. Not every kid can afford. They can probably do it, but they can't afford it. Yeah. We need to be able to give more scholarships for degrees, better schooling. We need a better infrastructure for kids with special needs. We don't have it. And I'm hoping to be able to play in that space somehow.
I don't know what to say. It's the perfect end to this fantastic episode. Nisreen, any last comments from your end? Any last thoughts?
Thank you. I don't think you were abrasive enough, so we may have to do this again.